Do you mean like my actual motivations or like a formalized
Yeah,
version
so
of
I'm
the
gonna ask you
motivation?
again. Where am I lagging alone?
No, you're not lying.
No, you're
Yeah,
good.
so the original question was whether or not you were atheistic and what that means. You said it means that you don't believe God exists or that God doesn't exist. So I'm asking
Uh,
you, do you have an argument or motivation as to why God doesn't exist under a specific view? Or you're
yeah.
saying you haven't seen evidence towards God's existence? Okay, so you said yeah to that. So what's the argument? And what view
By
are you going
argument, do
under?
you mean like a formalized argument or an informal argument? Because I have
It can be
obvious
either.
informal
I'm
and
just asking what motivation,
okay.
hold on,
Well, the
specifically what
informal,
motivation do you have? And then what is the view of God that you don't posit?
so the informal motivation would just be that in my
I'm
web
sorry,
of
I think the
experiences.
second part should go first.
What was the second part? Which version of God do I disagree with?
Yes.
That's just yeah, it's just the omni God.
I'm not defending that. Mm,
Hey, you're not
actually,
a
go ahead.
theist?
I can defend that. Well, I'll just respond to you. Go ahead. What are you saying?
Okay, well, my informal motivations is just that in my web of experiences, I've
Can you
never had
type it?
any interaction with God. I'm on phone. Yugi, can
Okay.
you type it for me?
Type what? What you just said?
Yeah, in my web of experiences, I've had no interactions with God, and I've had interactions with things
Wait,
that
I'm
seem
sorry. How is that
inconsistent
an
with God.
argument as to why he doesn't exist?
That gives me
So just to
motivation
be clear,
to
I
believe it doesn't
clarified.
exist.
Wait, maybe you're retarded, but I clarified before going into this that there was a distinction between the belief of God and then the existence of God. So sure, you can have motivation for reasonability at least as to why he might not exist or likely doesn't exist, but what's the argument as to why he doesn't exist?
Wait, Agent, what was the second part you said? You've had no interaction with God and you've had interaction with
Things
Infinity.
that are inconsistent with God's existence. Like
Okay,
infinity, I
Okay, so we can
understand that
talk
there's a
about the
difference
second part.
between.
If you have a reductio, we can talk about the second part, but the first part doesn't respond to the position overall.
If I have a reductio,
If you're trying to point out an inconsistency, is it the case that there exists a contradiction?
oh, a contradiction.
Is it
No,
inconsistent because there's something within reality that conflicts with the omni God?
no, there's just an evidential motivation.
Oh, my bad. Hold on, let me ban this dude.
You
All
banning
right,
me?
go ahead. No, not you.
There's an evidential motivation. So I have reasons to believe that a
Yeah,
guy
so
would
I'm
not
gonna
allow
say
this.
this once again. So for the first part, because I would like to move on to the second part, as I've said, for the first part, motivation for a belief is distinct from motivation of his existence. You said that he doesn't exist. We're not talking about your beliefs currently. If you have reasonability for likelihood when it comes to the belief of God, that is different from saying that he does not exist. So if you want to go back on your claim and then try to defend that you believe he doesn't exist, then you can do that in a different debate. But the current debate is whether or not he doesn't exist and what your argument is.
Oh yeah, that's how evidence works. So if I have evidence to show that God doesn't exist, that justifies the claim that
Okay,
God
shut up.
doesn't exist. Set
Correct?
up?
No.
Is that what you said?
Justify your position.
In my web of experiences, I have no interactions with God, and there are things
How's
that
that
are
an argument as to
inconsistent with
why he
God.
doesn't exist?
That's a motivation, right? So
That's a
my
motivation for the
experiences
belief,
are
which
general. My
doesn't, hold on, just
experience
be clear. Why does your experiences determine whether or not God exists? I agree, off of your
determine.
experiences, dependent on the criteria. I'm sorry, I don't think I was
Just kept
done.
talking about.
Depending on the criteria off of your web of experiences, you can formulate reasonability towards a belief, maybe. However, that doesn't
Right?
justify his lack of existence.
Wait, you don't think it justifies? So if I have no
No,
experience with
I don't
something, you
believe
don't
your
think
web
it
of
justifies?
experiences justifies the lack of existence of God. Rather, I believe it's a basis you could possibly use for a belief, which I don't believe that's a good basis, but I can grant it is a basis.
What's the distinction between a basis and justification?
Just to be clear, the justification is what you're using for the basis, retard.
Okay, so the justification that God does not exist
And hold on, just to be
that
clear,
I've
hold on, I
presented
don't
you
think I
with.
was done. I was done, but I just want to add something. So even if you were to grant
Okay.
that the basis and the motivation are identical in that instance, it is still not the case that the web of experiences will be something in which motivates the lack of existence of God. Rather, it just being a basis, or in other words, a motivation for the lack of a belief of God's existence, which are two different topics.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like you want the formalized version. So that would just be under the hypothesis
Wait, my bad for
that
cutting you
God
off. I promise I'm
exists.
gonna let you speak. So are you dropping the second part? Because the
What
first
was the
part is
second
already
part?
dismissed as I just continued it. Are you dropping the inconsistent part?
The inconsistent, which one? I mean, the inconsistent
You
things
said
I
God's
observe.
existence is inconsistent with things that happen within reality.
No, I'm giving a cumulative case.
Go ahead.
Did Infinity lag out?
No, I can hear him, I think.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can
How
hear
am I
you
done,
now.
Mono?
So the
Okay, go ahead.
formalized version is just under the hypothesis that God exists. It is not 100% expected that I have no experiences with him, and I see things that are roughly inconsistent
Wait,
with
hold on,
its
just to be clear.
existence.
Non-religiously, if you believe in the omni God, why is it the case that it's unexpected 100% that you have a lack of experiences with God?
Like under the hypothesis that something doesn't exist, do you agree that it's 100% expected
I'm
I
sorry,
don't
can you repeat
interact with
yourself?
it? Under the hypothesis that something doesn't exist, do you agree it's not 100% expected that I don't have an interaction with them? And vice versa?
What? Okay, so let me just
Under the
clarify. Look,
hypothesis,
yeah, go ahead.
you want me to go? Under the hypothesis that under the hypothesis that something doesn't exist, do you agree it's not 100% expected that I have no interactions with it, and vice versa?
No, I don't agree with that. Under the hypothesis that something
What?
doesn't exist, hold on. Okay, maybe I'm not understanding the question, so I'm going to answer it in the way that I think you were asking it, and then you can cut me off whenever you want. So, under the hypothesis that something doesn't exist, it is 100% expected that you're not going to be having any experimental interactions with it or experiences with it.
Okay, awesome. And then vice versa, which just means that you can make
No,
the same
I don't believe
claim.
it's vice versa. If it is the case that something exists, that does not mean that there's a likely interaction you're going to have with it within your lifespan. It doesn't mean that there's a 50% chance, etc.
That's irrelevant.
However, it is the case. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm done. However, it is the case that if something doesn't exist, then there's 100% an expectation of not exist or not interacting with it. So let me just clarify.
Well, it
once
doesn't
again
have
so you
to be
understand.
100%
If it doesn't exist,
expected.
you're 100% not expecting to interact with it or experience it. If something does exist, you don't have to have any percentage of expectations to interact with it or have experiences with it. That is different. If my mother exists, let's say she gave me up for adoption at birth. Just because I know that she exists, it's confirmed that she exists, doesn't mean that I have expectations to interact with her or have experience with her. The vice versa is retarded.
So I don't know why you'd say that. Under the theist hypothesis or under any hypothesis that says something does exist, you think it is 100% expected that I don't interact with it.
No, just to be clear, I never said that its existence
Okay, I
would
didn't think
entail
you
an
did.
expectation, which is 100%. What I said was,
Okay, awesome.
just to clarify, if it exists, that does not mean you should hold an expectation to have experiences or interactions with it. However, if it doesn't exist,
Well, that's fine.
so meaning vice versa, shut up, meaning vice versa, the opposite, if it doesn't exist, you can infer that there's going to be a lack of expectations reasonably when it comes to interactions and experiences.
Okay, but you don't agree that a theist or under the theist hypothesis, I would have 100% expectancy to not interact with the thing, right? You understand that
That's
wrong.
not what I said. I just
I know
answered
that's
this
not
10
what you're saying,
times. Are
but
you
this is
retarded
my
or
argument.
stupid?
Well, this is
Yeah,
the
I agree. I'm
proposition
asking
presenting
what's
you
the
with.
argument. Hold on, what's the argument as
Are
to
you
why that's true?
misinterpreting it?
Just because, hold on, I'm not misinterpreting anything.
Are you sure?
Yup, that's why I said it, dumbass. I
Infinity, check
already see
that.
the
I wrote
argument.
it out
Thank you,
for you.
Yogi.
Can you
Yeah, I
espouse
know.
what I'm saying back to me?
Yeah, what you said was, if it's the case, or I'm just going to ask it in the question.
Hello? Did I cut out?
My bad. So, under the theistic view, would it not be the case that if something exists, there would be a lack of 100% expectation? That was the question.
That's the question?
Yes,
No,
that
I'm
was the
asking
question
you
you
to
asked.
tell me
Yes, I'm
what my
able to
view
track.
was.
Correct.
Well, I'm asking you to tell me what the
Wait,
proposition
no, hold on.
was that I presented you with.
No. So, do we agree? Hold on. Do you grant that that was the question you asked? Because we're not doing this shitty rhetorical shit. I was able to track everything you said. Was that the question you just asked before?
You have to repeat the question again.
Oh my God. So you're not even able to track when you comment on whether or not I understand or is able to track what you said.
Well, I was able to identify that you didn't give me two propositions, and I asked
You were
you
able to
tell me what the two
identify, hold on, you
propositions
were able
are.
to identify
Yes.
that you can't track. I agree. But hold on, also,
Not what I said, but
I said I
okay.
was repeating the question, by the way. And it's not what you said, it's what you implied, retard. But I responded to
What is
this
this cringe
asking,
meta
what's your
thing?
response to the point that I gave?
What point did you give?
Oh my God. The answer to the question of whether or not, chill, bro, whoever that is, chill. The The answer to the question on whether or not it was vice versa is a point that I made. I answered and explained why I gave the answer in a specific way. Now, if you disagree with my answer and my reasoning behind my answer, you can respond to that.
Okay, so just to be clear, the two propositions I've
Why do you talk
presented you
like
with
that? Man?
are
You put some emotion in your voice.
under the.
Let him
What is
talk. Stop man.
This guy talking
Oh,
about-
you want to get banned? You get a ban. Hold on.
Damn, that's fucked up.
Yeah, chill out.
This poor guy. Don't disagree with this guy. So under
Correct.
the atheist
go ahead.
hypothesis, it's 100% expected that I don't interact with a thing. Under the theist
Yup,
hypothesis, it is not 100% expected that I don't interact with the thing. Do you agree with both of those things?
I've already answered the question. I ain't gonna lie. Like, everybody in chat heard me answer this question. Can we please move on? I'm going to clarify for the recording, and I'm not saying. Hold on, single finish chill. So for the recording, I'm going to clarify. This is not supposed to be an answer to his question. I'm clarifying my position in relation to the topic he brought up overall. It is not the case that just because you are theistic and you believe God exists non-religiously, that entails 100% expectation rate when it comes to interaction or interacting or experiencing God. However, it is the case, shut up. It is the case on the opposite. If you're atheistic and you posit the view that God does not exist, there's a lack of 100% expectation of interaction or experiences with God.
That's not what the propositions are.
I'm sorry, so maybe you're retarded. So I'm going to repeat this once again, not as a response to you, but to clarify what my answer was in relation to the topic. I'm telling the recording X, Y, and Z. So since Yugi also wants to dick ride in chat, I never said I was responding to him. I said I was talking to the VC in the recording of my position relative to a topic.
Holy meta jargon. Are you going to answer yes or no?
Respond.
What?
What do you mean respond? I gave you a question. Respond to
I
my
already
own
answered the question 10 times. I'm sorry, repeating the question and then expecting a new answer is not going to work on me.
Every single
That might
time
work
you
on fucking
answer
mine
the
or
question,
something.
you strawmans the proposition.
I'm sorry, so I'm going to repeat this once again. Repeating the question and then expecting a new answer is not going to work on me. You've asked the same retarded question 10 times. I've answered all 10 times. You're asking an 11th time. I'm not answering the 11th time. I'm not about to be charitable.
If you're failing to understand the question multiple times, that's just a big blow to
I mean,
your
you're assuming
intelligence.
I'm failing. I believe I responded to it quite.
But I've told you that you've strawmanned the proposition.
And you've also told me that your position is correct. Obviously, you're consistently saying retarded shit.
Obviously, I
Like,
would
what the
say
fuck?
it's correct. That's what our defense is.
Yeah, which is why I'm using your confirmation of your position there to prove your retardation.
Yo, 1 second. I'll meet you back. there.
Cook.
Hold on.
This nigga just said, well, obviously I'm going to defend my position. That's not the point. The point is you consistently defend and affirm retarded things. Therefore, I don't care what you're obviously saying.
Why are you still meta jargon?
It's not meta jargon. It's called embarrassing you.
You're still misunderstanding what I'm
I'm
telling
sorry.
you.
That was a stutter there. Can you repeat yourself?
You can't understand me?
No, I couldn't understand the stutter. Correct. That's why I told you to repeat yourself, retard.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Wait, so
the
you believe in God?
proposition is under...
So I'm going to ask you once again, what's the response?
That was so funny. Under the theist hypothesis, it is not 100% expected.
Okay, so you're repeating yourself. Do you have a new point?
You're ignoring the point. Obviously, I'm going to repeat myself.
Well, obviously you believe that. So hold on. You believe I'm ignoring the point. Everybody else agrees who is not biased, by the way. That I slammed you on the point, so let's move on from it.
Does bias mean smart?
No. Bias for this case will mean retarded.